Okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're ready. Hello, this is Freethought Forum, a program produced by and funded by the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee. I'm Larry Rhodes.
And I'm Ralph Eisler. We want you to know that if you don't believe in God, you're not alone. Right here in East Tennessee, you can find free-thinking atheists and agnostics. This is a show for them and for people committed to a life rooted in science and free of supernatural beliefs.
This is a call-in show. However, we only have one phone line, so if you can't get through, we invite you to tweet your questions or comments to us at FFTVKnox. While we go over a few announcements, we invite you to start calling in now at the number on the screen. You can get a pen and paper, and we'll give you our email address later on in the show. The Atheist Society of Knoxville has a fun meetup at a bar or eatery in Knoxville on a weekly basis. Tonight is the meetup, and it's at Barley's Tap Room and Pizzeria in the Old City immediately following the show. We invite you to come on down. Look for the silver-jacketed copy of The God Delusion standing upright on the table. And as Matt Dillahunty from the Atheist Experience in Austin, Texas always says, everyone is welcome to our happy hour for food, drink, and conversation. But if you plan to preach, proselytize, provoke, or punch, please don't.
The Rationalists of East Tennessee have several regular monthly meetings. First and third Sundays are usually lectures with lively roundtable discussions. The book club meets on the second Sunday, and the reflection group gets together for a potluck lunch on the fourth Sunday. On Sunday, November 4th, RET member Dr. Alan England will give a presentation titled Reflections on the Religions and Cultures of Korea and Japan. The November 11th book club will feature Moonwalking with Einstein. And I want to give you a special heads-up announcement tonight that on Saturday, December 8th, we will feature Tom Flynn, the Executive Director of the Council for Secular Humanism. This will be held in the auditorium of the Goins Administration Building at the college campus of Pellissippi State Community College. The title of the talk is The Trouble with Christmas. Tom promises to give a hilarious look at the historical sources of all our holiday customs. Visit our website for additional details, including time and locations.
Today's topic is a religion's obsession with sex and reproduction and how it influences politics. If you've been watching the speeches of the Republican candidates for office, you have to be aware that the Republican Party, which is strongly supported by religious ideologies lately, is very much concerned with controlling the sexual practices and reproduction choices of all Americans, especially of women. We're going to discuss in this show how this will affect your liberty. But first, we'll go to the In the News segment.
Okay, so what do you have there, Larry?
Okay. It was sent to my attention earlier in the week that there was an article about called A Memo from the Boss. Vote this way. Imagine getting a letter from your boss that would tell you how to vote. Until 2010, federal law barred companies from using corporate money to endorse campaign or political candidates, and that included urging employees to support specific politicians. But the Supreme Court's Citizens United decision has freed companies from those restrictions, and now several major companies, including Georgia-Pacific and Cintas, have sent letters or information packets to their employees suggesting and sometimes explicitly recommending how they should vote this fall. In these letters, the executives complain about the cost of overregulation and health care overhaul and possible tax increases. Some of the letters warn that if President Obama is reelected, the company would be harmed and potentially jeopardizing your job.
Boy, is that intimidation or not?
Yeah.
Wow. Well, David A. Siegel, 77, chief executive of Westgate Resorts, a major timeshare company, wrote to his 7,000 employees saying that if Mr. Obama won, the prospect of higher taxes could hurt the company's future.
I think we have a slide for him in there.
Do we?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hopefully.
No, that's not it, but anyhow,
No.
all right. Well, anyhow, he said the economy doesn't currently pose a threat to your job. What does threaten your job, however, is another 4 years of the same presidential administration. Mr. Siegel wrote, "If any new taxes are levied on me or my company, as our current president plans, I will have no choice but to reduce the size of this company." In an interview, Mr. Siegel said he was not ordering his employees to vote this way. "There's no way I can pressure anybody," he said. "I'm not in the voting booth with them."
Yeah, right.
Boy, some of these guys, really hard to
Live
believe.
in an alternate universe.
Yeah, Mr. Siegel added, "I really want to know how I felt 4 more years under President Obama was going to affect them. It would be no different from telling your children, eat your spinach, it's good for you."
Yeah. Back it up with a paddling.
Yeah.
Dave Robertson, the president of Koch Industries, sent an information packet and letter this month to more than 30,000 employees of subsidiary Georgia Pacific, a paper and pulp company. The letter attacked government subsidies for a few favored cronies, meaning his party's not in office, so he's not the crony,
Right.
as well as an unprecedented regulatory burden for business. The letter added that many of our more than 50,000 U.S. employees and contractors may suffer the consequences, including higher gas prices, runaway inflation, and other ills. Georgia Pacific letter, first reported in these times, included a flyer listing several candidates endorsed by the Koch brothers. Can you imagine getting an email with a flyer, a letter from your boss with a flyer endorsing all of these
Yeah, and saying, "I'm not really telling you how to vote, right? I'm just telling you how I feel."
Right. Can you imagine showing up to work with like an Obama sticker on your car? How that would affect your job?
No way.
Yeah. The conservative billionaires, including Mitt Romney, was on this flyer, as well as opinion articles that the brothers had written. Travis McKinney, a forklift driver of Georgia Pacific in Portland, Oregon, said that the company's political package had spurred widespread discussion. At least that's good.
Yeah.
But it leaves a bad taste, Mr. McKinney said. "I won't even wear my Obama pin to work because of the mailer." So it's like a bumper sticker.
I don't blame him.
You can't do that.
Yeah, in a statement, Koch Industries said its mailing contained pieces of information that we believe are important for our employees to know about. The company said the letter was no way intimidation. "We'll make it clear that any decision about which candidate to support belongs solely to our employees."
Yeah.
Other companies whose top executives have sent out anti-Obama letters include Right-Height, a manufacturer of industrial equipment based in Milwaukee, and ASG Software Solutions, based in Naples, Florida. Many corporate executives say they have stepped up their political activities to counter organized labor's efforts on behalf of Mr. Obama and other Democrats. Even before Citizens United, unions were allowed to promote candidates to their members. Democrats and Republicans alike acknowledge the effectiveness of labor's political efforts. But of course, we're seeing that the right wing now is trying to minimize the impact of labor by destroying public labor unions. So.
Well, not only that, but even if you support a different candidate than the labor union, they're not going to fire you. Or your position in the labor organization, your card-carrying membership is not going to be jeopardized like your job would be in this case.
Right, exactly. And Mr. Romney himself has urged business owners to appeal to their employees. In a conference call in June organized by the National Federation of Independent Businesses, he said, "I hope you make it very clear to your employees that what you believe is in the best interest of your enterprise and therefore their job and their future in the upcoming elections."
And this very well may have a reactionary whiplash effect. If my boss came down on me really hard to vote one way, I might very well just vote the other way just to spite him.
Yeah.
This is another situation where the Republicans have been in the position where they have the power, therefore they are right. They're, quote, righteous. Might does not make right.
No, this is typical of the scare techniques that are being employed in this election.
Yeah. Larry Gold, an associate general counsel for the AFL-CIO, said that some of the recent employer letters, by hinting at possible loss of employees' jobs, appeared to have crossed the line into improper coercion. Federal law and laws of several states bar anyone from coercing or intimidating voters into voting a certain way. But Bradley A. Smith, a Republican former member of the Federal Election Committee and professor at the Capital University Law School, disagreed, saying letters like these sent by companies were not a firm threat to fire anybody if Obama won. But according to a Citizens United ruling, companies may recommend candidates to employees, said Eugene Volokh, a law professor at the University of California, which is just another reason we need to get rid of that law.
Yeah.
If an employer wants to say this candidate is good or bad for our business and therefore good or bad for you, the employee, that's permissible under the law. That's protected by the First Amendment. But if your employer threatens to fire you based on how you vote, that is not protected, and that is coercion.
It certainly is. Many legal experts, liberal legal experts, fear that employees could be discouraged from exercising their rights to free speech. The concern here is that there's an unavoidable power disparity between management and employees, said Adam Skaggs, a senior counsel at the liberal Brennan Center for Justice. Put yourself in the shoes of an employee at any of those companies. Are you going to be comfortable putting an Obama bumper sticker on your car and driving into the employee parking lot? You bet you're not. If you're in a small community with a big employer, will you feel uncomfortable about putting up a yard sign for a candidate your boss doesn't favor? Richard Lax, chief executive of Lax Enterprises, an auto parts company in Grand Rapids, Michigan, wrote to his 2,300 employees this month that warning that an Obama victory would mean higher health care costs and higher taxes that would eat into their paychecks. It's important that in November you vote to improve your standard of living, and that will be through smaller government and less government, he wrote.
Right. Scott D. Farmer, chief executive of Cintas, the uniform supply company, sent a letter to his company's 30,000 employees on October 19th, denouncing the Affordable Care Act and saying it amounts to the single largest tax on Americans and business in history. He warned employees that the overregulation that business is facing today is from the various administration agencies, such as Environmental Protection Agency and the National Labor Relations Board, is suffocating many companies. Mr. Farmer added this uncertainty felt by many of our customers about their ability to run and grow their own business prevents them from adding jobs, which hurts our ability to grow and add jobs. Asked about Mr. Farmer's letter, Greg Hart, Cintas's vice president for government affairs, responded, "The communication was not an attempt to suggest to employees how to vote." Yes, I mean, can you say one thing out of one side of your face and the other out of the other? But he says, rather, it was just set to help partners make an informed decision. Sure.
Sure.
By the way, coercion, and then found in the dictionary, is the act of using force or intimidation to obtain compliance. And I can't imagine a more valid use of the word than this article here.
Yeah, okay. Well, it's time now to get on to the main part of our program. Remember, the title of this program is The Religious Obsession with Sex and Reproduction. And we took this up because it's come to the fore in this campaign. We see candidates on the right out there campaigning for jobs and improved business climates, etc. But there's a not so subtle sub-message there that that this is about abortion, about reproduction rights, about gay marriage. If you read any of the letters in the Knoxville News Sentinel, you'll see how many of them are devoted to this subject and how many of the people are voting solely on the basis of abortion rights and gay rights.
It's so true. This is call-in show. As a reminder that we do have one phone line. It is currently open, and you're welcome to call in and talk to us about any of this at your leisure. Most Americans under 50 years old have grown up with many different types of birth control readily available and with legal access to abortion providers. This ability has allowed women to pursue education beyond high school, to learn professions, and to develop fulfilling careers in addition to being homemakers or worse. Or we're just serving as breeding vessels for the next generation. That would be worse.
Now, this wasn't always so. November 1st will mark the 62nd anniversary of the Estelle Griswold and Charles Lee Buxton opening birth control clinic in New Haven, Connecticut, for which they were arrested 9 days later. So we thought we'd take this program to discuss the importance of the ensuing court case for individual privacy and freedom, and how the religious right, with its obsession over sex and reproduction, is still trying to overturn that decision.
The background of this event was the following. In 1879, Connecticut passed a law making it a crime for anyone, even married couples, to use birth control drugs or devices. The law also made it a crime to give someone medical information and advice about birth control. Connecticut said it enacted the law to prevent married people from having sexual relations outside of marriage. But this was obviously motivated by religionists to legislate private morals by using the threat of pregnancy as a bludgeon to ensure marital fidelity.
Yeah. The Griswold case eventually reached the U.S. Supreme Court, became a real landmark case. The court invalidated the Connecticut law by a 7-2 margin on the grounds that it violated the right to marital privacy. Although the Bill of Rights does not explicitly mention privacy, Justice William O. Douglas wrote for the majority that the right was to be found in the penumbras and emanations of other constitutional protections. Now that's a little vague, but in the language of the justices, I'm sure he understood what that meant. Since Griswold, the Supreme Court has cited the right to privacy in several rulings where it was extended to unmarried couples, and most notably in Roe v. Wade, where the court ruled that a woman's choice to have an abortion was protected as a private decision between her and a doctor. For the most part, the court has made these later rulings on the basis of Justice Harlan's substantive due process rationale in the Griswold case. And you can see up behind is a picture of Elaine Griswold in front of her birth control clinic there in Connecticut. Actually, the sign says Planned Parenthood Center.
Yeah. What gets me is the very people that are pushing this type of thing also say that we need to get government out of our lives.
Yeah.
That we need a small, uninvolved government that doesn't take all this regulation and put it on us. And in the very next breath they say, you know, they need to control what goes on in the bedroom. They need to control the decisions that a man and his wife make about planning their family. All of that, they're inviting big government right back into the house again.
Yeah, it depends on whose ox is being gored in this
That's right,
case.
right. Or whose religion is being gored in this case. The Griswold line of argument in cases remains controversial and has drawn accusations of judicial activism by many conservatives. There's an interesting background note here, though. James Madison is often called the father of the Bill of Rights, but originally he was against adding them to the Constitution on the grounds that the law might construe that they were the only rights which citizens were entitled to. But today we actually do have judges who support that position. Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia, a devout Roman Catholic, appears to have taken this view and denies that the Constitution contains any language that would indicate that a person has a right to privacy, if you can imagine that.
Yeah, now, I think we all respect and admire the Constitution we have in this country. And what we have to realize also that was written over 250 years ago. Times are not exactly the same.
Slavery was in place.
Yeah. Slavery was in place. The country was basically agrarian at the time. And we didn't have any such things as labor unions, etc. It's interesting to note also that at the time the Constitution was ratified, that only about 10, maybe 15% of the people in the United States at that time belonged to any organized church. Anyhow, so getting back then to the main topic, why it would appear that these cases about privacy, right to have birth control information, to be able to buy birth control were settled 40 or 50 years ago. But the religionists have never stopped trying to reverse the privacy rights afforded by these decisions. And questions of private sexual behavior have become a factor in the upcoming election. the Republican platform would ban all abortions with no exceptions for rape, incest, or to save the life of the mother. I don't know of any country where the legislature has approved any such a stipulation. Perhaps in some of the Islamic countries where under Sharia law things get pretty bad, I'm sure it is, but I don't think that's the law we want to emulate in this country.
Nope.
So the Republican platform would also ban gay marriage. And as I said before, if you read the letters in Knoxville News Sentinel, you readily see that these points have become the sole voting criteria for many Christian fundamentalists.
It's like a one idea election that they have to contend with. If they don't get their way in this particular one, then screw the rest of the country and how it will go down the road in the future. Mike Lofgren is a veteran Republican insider who has just had a book published that is titled "The Party is Over: How Republicans Went Crazy and Democrats Became Useless and the Middle Class Got Shafted." There's a short summary of this book on Salon.com, where he writes that the religious right has taken over and turned his party into a bunch of anti-intellectual nuts. And we see that all the time. If you look at some of the people that have run for public office in the last year, from, what is it, Bachman to...
Bachman, Rick Perry.
What's her name from Alaska?
Sarah Palin.
Sarah Palin. Yeah. All the front people are just turned into a bunch of intellectual nuts who, even worse than that, espouse things about which persecution, killing gays like in overseas, rape being God's will. Just one thing after another. There was another book that came out recently, maybe last year, called "The Smell of Dead Elephants: How the Republican Party has been taken over by the religious right and is dying." And I think Barry Goldwater would be turning over in his grave over this right now.
I mean, even Ronald Reagan, I think. We have a caller here, so.
Welcome to Freethought Forum. May we have a name or a nickname?
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. It's Faithless Forrest. I was watching the show, and you talked about something that's important, I think, to mention. You were mentioning how one of our Supreme Court justices denies that there is a right to privacy in the Constitution.
That is terrible.
Yeah, well, it seems to me that he hasn't read the Constitution, because one of the amendments to the Constitution specifically says that the absence of an enumerated right shall not be construed, I'm paraphrasing here, to deny the existence of such right. Now, it just amazes me that a Supreme Court justice could make the kind of statement you said that Scalia made.
Yeah. Well, you also have to think that that type of statement that he did make was religiously motivated. He wouldn't have made it had it been like a secular person who recognized that people have the right to their own private life. In the Catholic Church, you don't have right to your own sexual
That may explain his motivation, but he very much.
Wow.
I mean, that's the spirit. He violated the denotated words of the Constitution. He's incompetent.
Well, of course, the duty of a judge is to interpret the Constitution, which is very vague in a lot of ways. And there are a lot of subtleties in interpreting it. And that's why we have this split in the court between the so-called liberals and the so-called conservatives. The conservatives want to characterize themselves as strict constructionists. That is, nothing that is not explicitly stated in the Constitution will they agree to, where the liberals have a more pragmatic point of view on it. And I think a point of view more in tune with the modern United States.
It also seems to me that people who claim to be conservative and want a limited government, and a government whose powers are only the enumerated ones in the Constitution, are really under the obligation to show fair in the Constitution. You are a legislative morality for the citizens. The government is given no such power.
You were breaking up quite a bit on that last sentence. Would you mind reiterating that one?
I hope the cell phone will start working again. I was saying that for people who argue that we need to limit the federal government only to the enumerated powers, they need to be challenged to show where the government, any government, has the enumerated power to legislate morality, because that's, of course, what they were trying to do in the law that was struck down by the Griswold case. You know, they wanted to, legislate conditions against, extramarital sex, I think Ralph said earlier.
Right.
Yeah.
That's true.
Well, one of the problems that comes in is the strict constructionists want to quote the Constitution that the powers that are not explicitly enumerated defer to the states, to the individual states, and that they are the ones that should make the laws, not the federal government. And this is a point of view that Romney has been pushing. If you watch anything he says now, for instance, we have this huge disaster with this storm Sandy moving up the East Coast, okay? It's going to take a lot of federal aid. There's enormous amount of damage there. And under Romney, FEMA would be basically destroyed. You would basically have to have a federal emergency agency in every state in the union.
A state emergency.
Yeah, to manage their own local emergencies. This makes no sense. I mean, this
it sounds like an unnecessarily redundant system.
Absolutely, and completely non-uniform.
Necessary for the emergencies that collectively as a nation we can respond to.
That's right, and that brings out another point. As you say, collectively as a nation, we are a collection of 48 different states, but at the time the Constitution was ratified and we set this up as a nation of 13 colonies. These were very distinct enclaves with very distinct types of social mores and practices, etc. Today, we're a melting pot. People don't stay where they grow up for the most part. They move all around the country. And this is a big difference between the conservatives and to the liberals, how you view this country as whether there is a collective good or whether there is no collective good, and whether it's every individual for himself.
All right, I'd like to paraphrase Paine, who said that, my religion is to do good, and the world is my country, and all humanity are citizens. And let me wish you guys a good show here. I'll keep watching. Bye for now.
Very good.
Okay.
Thank you
for calling for us.
Well, it's halfway through the hour. We're probably going to take a quick break here and show a couple of short informational videos about ASK and RET. And we'll be back in just a little bit. We'll continue taking calls and talking about the religious obsession with sex.
Yeah, please do call in. Number shown on the screen there.
If you live in or around the Knoxville area and are questioning your religious beliefs or simply believe in one less God than everyone else, well, you're not alone. The Atheist Society of Knoxville is a fun and friendly group of people just like you that meets twice a week at a bar or restaurant. We meet every Tuesday night following the show at Barley's Tap Room and Pizzeria for happy hour. You'll find our group either inside or on the patio. Look for Richard Dawkins' silver-jacketed book, The God Delusion, standing upright on the table. On Fridays, we meet at Agave Azul or the Beard and Beer Market. But if you plan to preach, proselytize, provoke, or punch, please don't. We all question what we believe at one point in our lives. If this is the time for you, come join us for food, drink, conversation, and fun. Do you find stories of talking snakes laughable? Do you prefer the scientific method over supernatural beliefs? Are you concerned about religious leaders and organizations imposing their values and rules on your body, your family, and the rest of our society? Well, take comfort in the fact that you're not alone. The Rationalists of East Tennessee meets weekly for fellowship and provides a forum for people who support skeptical thinking and rational discussion of these and other issues. To find out more information or to find out about our next meeting, visit us on the web at www.rationalist.org.
And we're back.
Okay.
To remind you again, 865-215-2288. If you can't read the number on the screen, taking calls now. The line is open.
Right. Any question you want to ask about RET or about the Atheist Society of Knoxville, or any question at all that you think is pertinent that you'd like to talk to us about, feel free to call in.
Or if you just have questions about atheism and free thought, we'd be more than happy to talk to you about that as well.
Exactly. A lot of people don't understand what those terms really mean.
But they think we don't understand what Christianity is, or Islam, or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
But, I mean, both of us grew up
In Christian homes.
churches.
Yeah.
Okay, well, getting back to the main topic, my own view today is that the Republican Party is better characterized by calling it a Christo-Republican Party. Ever since the religious ideologues have taken control, as Mike Lofgren says, they've promoted it as the party of God. Christian fundamentalism has sometimes been defined as the doctrine that there's an absolutely powerful, infinitely knowledgeable, universe-spanning entity that is deeply concerned about every individual's sex life. This perversion of the political process shows up most strongly in their obsession with sex and reproduction, coupled with their willful ignorance about science in general and biology in particular.
Talk about willful ignorance. During the monkey trial, the Scopes trial of the 20s, there was this reporter that came down from Chicago, WGN, can't remember his name offhand. Do you remember?
Yeah, you don't mean H.L. Mencken, do you?
H.L. Mencken. And he said he visited and he wrote about visiting a holy roller camp one night. They were dancing around the fires and stuff like that. And he asked one woman in particular, he says, have you read anything besides the Bible? And she said, no. Why would I want to? Because everything that's good is in the Bible. If I read something else, it will take my mind away from all that is good and true. Yeah. So she took it quite literally that reading something else besides the Bible was defaming her own spirit, her own chances at eternal life. So talk about willful ignorance. I mean, that verbalizes or epitomizes it right there.
Yeah, yeah.
We're going to put up a chart. It says you only have to look at the chart to understand how deeply this obsession permeates our thinking and actions. It shows that from 1985 to about 2010, state legislatures enacted about 10 to 20 abortion restrictions per year. That's this low line going along through here. Then the Tea Party swept into control of many legislatures in the midterm elections of 2010 by advocating a policy of fiscal restraint. But what did they do first? They jacked the number of restrictions per year up to 80 in 2011. You can see that. We don't have the number for 2012 yet.
Well, yeah. It comes back down because they had done most of what they could do in those legislatures.
Yeah. So they first complained about all the restrictions in place by the government, and then as soon as they move in, screw the fiscal restraints, they start putting in all these abortion restrictions. That was the real agenda in the first place. This was a real bait-and-switch election. The most notable of these was the Virginia bill, sponsored by a Roman Catholic legislature that mandated that an invasive transvaginal ultrasound procedure before a woman could obtain an abortion had to be made. It was supported by Pat Robertson's protege, Governor Bob McDonnell, until he was forced to back down by the ensuing uproar.
Yeah, the ladies got together and really did a good job. Now, there's still an ultrasound requirement in Virginia, but it requires only an external scan. Nevertheless, it's burdensome for the woman and
more regulation.
More regulation, and I think she may even have to pay for it.
And it's based on religion. I mean, this is,
and so it clearly discriminates against poor people that way. Now, we secularists don't care about whatever guidelines people within a religious sect want to impose on themselves. But we sure do care when they want to impose them on everybody else. And this is particularly worrisome for the upcoming election, when for the first time in the history of the U.S., Americans could vote for a government where theocrats exercise strong control, despite the clear intention of the Founding Fathers to separate matters of church and state. So let's look at some of the things we might expect if these theocrats do gain control. These are not fantasies. These are things they've tried before, but did not have the political power to pull off. Yeah. But if they succeed in this election, they may be able to do it.
Let me mention one thing before we go into that. I do have one caveat about what you were saying earlier about we don't really care what a religious group enforces on themselves. My problem with that, and I'm sure Ralph would agree with me on this, is that the children are defenseless in the situation. Look at the Amish. They take their children out of school at grade 8. Yeah. They are denied an education. There are many. What about this little girl in the Middle East that was recently Pakistan? She was a 14-year-old girl that was advocating education. This Taliban person got on a bus, asked for her by name, walked down the aisle, pulled a gun, and shot her in the head for education. These children are at the mercy of their religious parents. Look at the children in the conclave in Texas, where they had guys that had multiple wives and had many children. What was the educational level of that conclave? That's the problem I have. They're denied, in many cases, good health care as well. They're denied blood transfusions for the Christian Sciences. They are at the mercy of these ultra-religious parents, and that's where I draw the line, and that's where I have a real problem with it.
I agree with you. When I said that, I was thinking more of the adults in that case. But it's clear that freedom of religion is not such a good thing in all circumstances. When you deny a child medical care who is dying and say that you're going to pray instead that he be saved, I mean, that's criminal, and you should be prosecuted criminally for it. Yeah.
What gets me is people will often ask me as an atheist why I'm so mad. What I don't understand, and what I ask them right back, is why aren't you? Yeah. I mean, this affects you as well. These are children, these are American children that are being denied their rights in the name of religion all across this country, and it's getting worse. And it's particularly if the religious right get into the offices during this election, we're going to see it worse than ever. You need to look into this stuff, get your information in order, and take action. And to do that, sometimes it takes a little anger. Yeah. To get you motivated.
It certainly does. So.
Okay, we have a phone call. You want to ask?
Hello, caller. Could you give us a name or a nickname?
Caller works just fine for me.
Okay, caller's good. Do you have a question or comment for us?
Well, I want to agree with you. I mean, if we let the Republicans have their way, we're going to have another theocracy just like Islam. I mean, we're going to be a Christian nation, but it'll just be in the Islamic tradition of controlling women and controlling every other aspect of people's lives by the threat of bullet head.
Yeah.
Christian Taliban, kind of like the KKK or something.
Yeah, I agree with you. There's, maybe I shouldn't mention by name, but there is a fellow named Bill Oliphant in Knoxville who writes letters to KNS frequently. He writes very good letters, and he had one recently where he discussed how Islam was at its prime, around 13th century or so, and they were leaders in science and literature and intellectual pursuits, and how they
were.
Huh?
Yes, they were.
And they turned inward to become more holy. And this is what started the downfall. And you see the difference between Islamic republics and the Western democracies in Europe. So.
Well, you're absolutely right. They were a leader in science, astronomy, and all kinds of things until religion got a hold of them. And that's the same way with the Republican Party. At one point, the Republican Party probably was trying to be conservative and conserving those things in America that are worth conserving. But now they're just a bunch of religious radical nuts.
Yeah. I mean, when I was much, much younger, many years ago, I'm talking back in the 40s and 50s, the Republican Party didn't have these religious fanatics controlling it. They had people who honestly had conservative viewpoints, that they thought were the right way to go. But these were people like Nelson Rockefeller, Barry Goldwater, people that you could respect, you know. You maybe not agreed with all their ideas. The other thing they were very strong on was personal freedom, individual freedom, much like we see some of the, not Republicans today, but what do I want to say, libertarians doing. And so they're quite a different party. This is not the same party.
Well, when a politician appeals to religion, they run a risk, and we see it happening with the Republicans. When you appeal to a religious base, you must become more fanatically religious in order to satisfy that base. So consequently, they get more and more screwy crazy.
Yeah, and when you get into bed with them, you make kind of an unholy pact there.
I don't know if they think getting into bed is okay. I think they have a problem.
Anything but. Yeah.
However, when some Republican says that he's against, gays and stuff like that, I'm assuming that he's probably just as gay as a $3 bill.
Who is this? I missed.
It seems like so many times when people come out and they're against.
Oh yeah.
Then you find out that they're like Ted Haggard.
Yeah.
That fairy.
But he's 100% heterosexual now.
No, yeah, right.
Yeah, well, this one fellow, I think I have some notes later in the program. I can't remember his name. He has been preaching for years that homosexuality can be cured. He is homosexual, but he's married, has 2 kids, and he finally came out about a month or 2 ago and said you just couldn't turn it off. I mean, although he's happily married with the 2 kids, leads that heterosexual lifestyle, he says he still has gay inclinations and gay desires.
Oh, yeah. As a matter of fact, if someone's a youth group leader in a Baptist church, I think they should just go ahead and be arrested and let them prove that they're not abusing the kids.
Assume guilty.
Assume guilty. Yeah. Okay.
But what I wanted to say about sex, all through the years, religion has tried to control every aspect of a human's life, including their food, you'll see in the Bible, including when they go to work and when they don't work. But the only thing that the only one thing that they don't control is breathing, because
and
the person
thinking
has to breathe.
They'll try to control thinking, but they really can't, which is one of the reasons that we were able to escape.
But that's just one fun thing to try to control.
What is? Oh, sex, yeah. Well, I have a theory on that earlier on, I think, and even now, that the leader of the group wants to minimize the sex that's going on in the group because he has motives of his own in that direction. He doesn't want these young girls having sex with other people, or young boys, whatever the case is, because he may very well want to move in on that himself.
You're absolutely right. We have seen the same sort of sex behavior in other cults that I assume is happening with the Christians, which is don't have sex. We saw it with Jim Jones. We saw it with the guy at Waco, where they're declaring no one can have sex except for me.
Right.
Yeah, this...
You see it over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And that's why the religion has such an obsession with sex. It's just, going back into the olden times.
Well, that's...
well, I know when I decide, if I was a young man who was looking for a girl, I don't think I'd go to christianmingles.com.
I don't think that would be your best
It might be
choice.
an unsatisfying sexual relationship, or probably would be.
Yeah. What were you going to say, Ralph?
The latest case like this we were talking about is this fellow Warren Jeffs, whom I think is whom you were mentioning. It's sort of one of these Mormon breakaway sects, and apparently a number of these scattered around. I'm not sure how many, where the leader of the sect claims he's a prophet, and he takes these young girls early on, and so eventually there are not enough women for the young men in the cult, and they get kicked out.
Or leave.
Yeah, or leave. They have to. There's nowhere else for them to go, and that's the only life they've known. So they're just sort of poor, struggling souls.
Well, yeah, and also you find out when you have people that want to have sex with very young girls, or they want virgins in heaven, it's because they're so sexually immature themselves that that's the only way that they can be comfortable is by having sex with a child.
Yes, and if and you know, there's a certain amount of power, especially if you get this girl at a very young age. I mean, you can control her basically all her life. And that's a lot of what the obsession with sex is about in religion. It's about control.
It is.
Well, I'd like to get off and let somebody else call, but yeah, I agree with virtually everything you said. The Republicans are nasty, nasty people.
Yeah. Well, thanks very much for calling in, caller.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay.
One thing I'd like to say is that the Republican Party is saying for a smaller and smaller federal government, get them out of our hair. You know, let them take care of the defense and raising an army, but then let all the states do everything else themselves. Yeah. Of course, these particular religious leaders or leaders that are espousing this are big deals in their own state. They will have a whole lot of clout in their own state. Yeah. And if they're particularly religious, then the clout that they're going to wield will be religious clout. You will end up with many, many states that emulate like Texas or Alabama or Louisiana, well, more like Mississippi, where if it weren't for the moderating force of the federal government, you can imagine you just end up with religious states, because they would control the education, the collection of taxes, the implementation of
any kind of laws regulating
the economy per se,
personal business. For instance, a couple years ago, Texas passed an anti-sodomy law, which went to the Supreme Court, and it was struck down. But of course, Antonin Scalia said, no, this is not right. Texas should pass this if it wants. I'm not making a judgment whether it should or not. I'm just agreeing with you that the states can do anything they want. And of course, the difficulty with this was really brought home with slavery and with this Jim Crow aftermath, you know. That give you an example what happens if you let the states just go on their own.
Yeah. Okay, we have another call. Well, welcome to Freethought Forum. May we have a name or a nickname?
Yeah, Phil.
Hello, Phil. Welcome to the show. Do you have a comment or question?
I just wonder what the point is of your show. I don't understand.
Do you know anything about atheism or free thought?
Well, the guns against sex. I don't know what do you think, God?
No, we're talking about the religious obsession with sex. This is a show about put on by free thinkers and atheists.
Well, I didn't know what was going on here. I flipped over here and it's talking about sex on the TV, and I just thought I'd call.
Yeah.
Do y'all not believe in heaven or hell?
That's pretty much the case, yes. We don't believe pretty much anything supernatural.
Supernatural. Well, I think that it's not supernatural. It's real. Heaven's real. Hell's real. And you're going to find out one of these days when you just exploded in a great fire and your toes are going to get a little warm. And I'll hang up and listen to your comments.
All right, thank you. No, it's just you can't really talk to someone like that more than, what, 30 seconds before they threaten you?
Well, yeah. I don't know. My toes are a little warm anyhow.
Yeah.
Let's do this one. How about you show
one? Okay, sure.
Yeah, would like to go ahead.
Okay. We were talking about the religious right and some of their fantasies. Let's look at some of the things we might expect if the theocrats do gain control. These are not fantasies. They're not things that they have tried. These are things that they have tried before, but did not have the political power to pull off. Their most obvious objection is the passage of a personhood bill that would define a zygote as a full person with rights from the instant of fertilization. This is even nuttier. We have a picture like a little blue square on it. There you go.
There you go. There's a zygote. Okay.
All right. And the size is 0.14 millimeter. It's extremely small. It's just a collection of cells.
Right, but that's one cell. That's one fertilized cell. It's about diameter, about the thickness of a piece of paper.
What gets me is that they want to give this collection of cells full personhood rights. When you get a small child, they don't care about the rights for education or health or any of that, as long as the child is toeing the mark for the religion of their choice. This is even nuttier than banning federal research funds for stem cell research on fertilized eggs that would otherwise have to be discarded. Now, rational people can debate limits on abortion that reach practical consequences, but to declare that a fertilized egg is a person sounds completely inane to anyone but a religious fanatic. Such a bill was defeated by voters in every conservative state, in the very conservative state of Mississippi earlier this year, so it is unlikely that the Christo Republicans would let the people decide directly on such legislation in the future if they are in power. If such a bill were to become law, it would bypass the court's ruling by effectively criminalizing all abortions. Not only that, but it would criminalize widely used contraceptive methods that prevent the implantation of a fertilized egg. Could a woman who has a miscarriage be prosecuted? Would a woman even be deemed to have any rights once she becomes pregnant? Would she cease to be a person in the eyes of the law and be just an incubator?
Yeah, so it's pretty hard to say.
It is.
So, do we want to go on to
sure.
discuss?
Yeah, this was a two-part program, but we don't have much time to finish the first part. We'll try to take it to the second and cover it a little bit.
Okay.
Lost the page.
So, all right. Well, if you ask most people who Alan Turing was, they wouldn't know. But he's widely considered to be the father of computer science, which impacts everyone today. But Alan Turing was also gay, which was a crime in Britain in 1952, and he was prosecuted for it. Chose treatment with female hormones, which is called chemical castration, as an alternative to jail. But he died from cyanide poisoning in 1954, just before his 42nd birthday. Was ruled suicide. Did he kill himself because of persecution he was suffering or not? We'll never really know, but it's a strong possibility. What is clear is that this brilliant man, who still had so much to offer the world, was treated appallingly by those in power just because of his sexual orientation.
So this brings us to that other sexual bugaboo that freaks out the Christo Republicans: gay rights and gay marriage. It's puzzling why fundamentalists are so hung up on what two consenting adults do in their sex lives. However, to me, it's not so puzzling about that. It's how they could think that God is concerned about it. The God who created the entire cosmos is worried about what two people do in the privacy of their own bedroom.
Yeah, that was the quote that I gave before, to define Christian fundamentalism.
Right. Mm-hmm. It may be hard for people to relate to a gay lifestyle, but why should this be so why should they be so adamantly against it? When pressed for answer, the religious righteous usually only make the weak claim that it's against God's desire while they throw out a few biblical quotes. Well, if you have to quote the Bible to justify your opinions, you already lost the argument. The rants of the religious hucksters from 2,000 years ago don't constitute a justification for anything.
Approximately 3.5% of Americans identify themselves as lesbian, gay, or bisexual, and the LGBT movement has made great progress toward acceptance over the last several decades by openly expressing their orientations. We are now aware that many prominent and accomplished Americans can be found in this group, and they are accepted by a majority of the population. Most recent polls show that same-sex marriage is supported by about 53% of the population, while 42% oppose it. If one asks whether same-sex individuals should be allowed to marry or form civil unions as an alternative, support can go as high as 60 or 70%, with Republicans being twice as likely to oppose as Democrats and independents. This would seem to reflect the party affiliation of the religious fundamentalists.
Just think for a second, if you're worried about what gay marriage would do to your marriage, then you've got a lot of problems besides gay marriage.
Yeah, that's true. I used to work with a guy who was strong Catholic, and he was deathly afraid of homosexuals. I said, well, it's not going to affect your marriage? So yes, it is. Oh, yes, it is.
How?
He couldn't tell me how.
Though. If anybody would like to call in and tell us how gay marriage would affect your marriage, please do. We see the extreme position of these members of the Westboro Baptist Church in Topeka who loudly proclaim that God hates fags as they picket funerals of soldiers killed in America's wars. It's not how clear this hatred translates into soldiers being killed, but when the religious fanatics never seem to have a problem with their illogical actions, I'm sure they'll pretty soon blame Sandy on homosexuals,
yes,
like they did Katrina.
Like they did Katrina, yeah. Okay, well, one of the most disgusting things to come out of the Christian anti-gay movement in recent years occurred at a conference in Uganda. From 5 to 8 March 2009, a workshop took place in Kampala, the capital of Uganda, that featured 3 American evangelist Christians. Scott Lively, an author who's written several books opposing homosexuality, Caleb Lee Brundage, a self-professed former gay man who conducts sessions on how to heal homosexuality, and Don Schmierer, a board member of Exodus International, an organization devoted to promoting freedom from homosexuality through the power of Jesus Christ.
Yeah, Jesus Christ who wandered around with 12 other men and never married. The theme of the conference, according to the New York Times, was called the Gay Agenda, and how to make gay people straight, with the Christians urging that acceptance of gay not be allowed to happen in Uganda as it occurred in the United States. The upshot was that members of Parliament David Bahati submitted a Kill the Gays bill making homosexuality punishable by death or life imprisonment, based on what these Christians were telling them.
Yeah.
The American evangelicals shed some crocodile tears and feigned horror at this outcome. But this was like Bill O'Reilly claiming innocence in the death of the abortion provider George Tiller after he repeatedly broadcast explicit directions to Tiller's home in Kansas. It's like Pilate washing his hands.
Most researchers agree that homosexuality has a genetic basis, but the religious ideologues still maintain that it's an aberrant lifestyle by choice. Alan Chambers, president of the world's largest ex-gay organization, Exodus International, recently renounced the group's long-held position that homosexuality can be cured, that gay people can become straight. Chambers, who identifies as ex-gay and is married with 2 children, admitted that he still has same-sex desires. And therapy aimed at turning kids straight will soon be illegal in California, with the state's governor declaring he hopes this new law will relegate such efforts to the dustbin of quackery.
Where it belongs.
Yeah.
If homosexuality has such a natural origin, you have to ask why religion is so terrified of it. The present Pope called it a moral evil, but according to Donald Cozzens in his book, The Changing Face of the Priesthood, said that the number of gay priests range from 23 to 58% of all priests. Mormons and Roman Catholics united to pass Proposition 8 in California. This was a proposition declaring marriage was to be construed between a man and a woman, and the initiative overturned the California Supreme Court's ruling that same-sex couples have a right to marry.
So we're getting down here to the end now, and we'll just say that we have to take a close look at how the sexual obsession is controlling the Republican Party and their platform these days.
Right.
So,
and it's going to kill the party before long because people are moving farther and farther away from religion.
Hope so.
It's time to start wrapping things up. Get out your pen and paper. This has been Freethought Forum, a program by the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee.
Please send us feedback. Leave voicemail at 865-272-9060 or mail us at freethoughtforum@yahoo.com.
You can see this show on Tuesdays from 5 o'clock to 6 o'clock Eastern Standard Time on this Knoxville station or on ctvknox.org, streaming live.
We want to send our thanks to Sam, Joas, and Forrest for technical support, and to the staff of CTV Knox.